Everyone, welcome to a new. I hate when the StreamYard does a thumbs up for me. Everyone, welcome to a new Energy Crew podcast. Me, your host JP Warren, and these podcasts are pretty much conversations about what's happening in the industry. Sometimes we'll fill you in on what happens, what operators are talking about at our Crew Club operator roundtables, and other times we have some industry leaders, some interesting people as a guest on this podcast, just to dive into more kind of like their background, their leadership style, what they see about this industry, different perspectives from industry leaders. And that's kind of what I'm excited about. Trey Lawson, the VP of Sales and Marketing for Mesa. We were actually, before you started, that's why we started kind of recording this, because there was an interesting history behind Mesa Solutions, Mesa Natural Gas Solution. Now, I want you to kind of clarify on kind of what the historical element is and we'll get it kicked off that way. And then we'll dive into some other tangents I'm sure we'll dive into. So, Trey, welcome to the show. Where you you're obviously tuning in from a microgrid right now on location. Great communication. Great. I love it. So where are you tuning in from today?
Midland, Texas.
You're still in Midland.
I am. Yeah, that place is tough to get out of, at least till Friday afternoon. And then I head back to my home, and that's in San Angelo. So just down the road.
It's very tough to get out of past 8:30 at night. I think a good way to make money if someone charters flights from Monday to Thursday going to Houston and Dallas at 9 p.m. or 9:30 p.m.
Yeah,
that would be an instant moneymaker. You were just talking before we started recording, and I want to dive into kind of your more personal life, but real quick, we just did a training for y'all, and obviously talking about Mesa Solutions and all that stuff. You were just talking about, first off, you like keeping things simple, but second off, you started talking about the history about giving homage to Team Boone Pickens and all that stuff. Dude, I didn't even know. Walk me through this. Like, that's very interesting.
Yeah. The name behind the name. So we were part of one of the original funds behind BP Energy, which is Boone Pickens Energy. So the name Mesa obviously is paying homage to Mesa Petroleum. And if you'll notice, the Mesa Petroleum logo and the Mesa Solutions or Mesa Power Solutions logo is very, very, very similar to each other. And so Mr. Pickens, was more than gracious enough to allow us to use that logo and make it ours. And so it still resonates today throughout the industry.
That's pretty cool to have some historical, a presence like that, kind of as the backdrop of your company.
Yeah. I mean, he was a natural gas guy, and that's what our power solutions are based around is using that clean fuel source as energy.
Oh, I think it's kind of interesting. Since my wife got in the oil and gas industry about like a year ago, it's like now we're having like industry conversations. She's like, "What do you think about Europe relying on domestic energy and natural gas?" It's like, "Whoa, babe, what kind of why don't you come to a crew club table and lead this
high level macro conversations?" That's cool.
I know it's different conversations than what movie we're going to watch or what show we're going to start binge watching. So, dude, give me a little background on yourself. I started snooping on your LinkedIn as I normally do before people come on all this stuff. And you're from Midland, but you also went to the Navy, I believe.
Yeah. So born and raised in Midland.
What was that like growing up in Midland back in the day? What was that like?
It was a lot different than what Midland looks like now.
What do you mean?
It was slower. I probably won't articulate this in a perfect way, but like growing up and I'm third generation oil and gas. My grandpa was in it. My dad is still in it. Although
were they all land
his way out.
Land based?
What's that?
So your third generation, was your dad and your grandfather, were they on land or were they offshore? Tell me their background.
No, they were all in the Permian.
Okay.
So all in Midland, Odessa. But prior to like the 2012 shell boom, like most everything in the oil and gas industry with regards to like the Permian Basin was contained in the Permian Basin. So your workforce was in the Permian Basin. A lot of your operators were also Permian Basin operators.
Okay.
And in 2012, maybe 2014, I may be getting the years wrong, but that first initial big shell boom, when it came to the Permian, it kind of changed everything because it was such a massive boom that the labor force in Midland, Odessa really just couldn't maintain it. And so that's when you started seeing a lot of rotational workers come in. And, and in my opinion, it changed the dynamic of the Permian Basin. You also started getting a lot of majors coming into the area. They had always been there. You've always had your Chevrons and stuff and your Exxons. But yeah, I think the whole dynamic of what Midland, Odessa was changed with that oil boom. And I'm not saying it's bad now. It's just different than when it was when I grew up. Growing up, and granted, I grew up in the 80s and 90s there, graduated high school in 2000. It's still 110, 115,000 folks there. But you knew a lot of them. It was a fair sized city, but it felt small enough that I would jump on my bike on a Saturday morning and disappear for 12 hours, and come home for supper.
Can't do that anymore. Can't do that.
Probably not many kids doing that anymore in Midland, Odessa. So yeah, just a different dynamic, different oil field, honestly, from the early 2000s to where it is now.
How do you feel? Okay, let me ask you a question. What do you feel has changed? Obviously, we got the M&As. I feel that, there's more super majors out there in the Permian. We don't have to stick to just Permian too, but like, how do you feel like, I feel the shift too. I felt that there's been like 3 or 4 shifts in this industry since my career. I've been in the industry for about 20 years. Where have you seen it kind of shift, like from those, early, 2010s, 2012, when you first kind of got in to kind of where we're at today? What have you seen driving these shifts, these changes?
That is a really broad question. I think that covers.
You do what you want to do with it, buddy. I toss it. You create it.
Well, I'll tell you what. Kind of on the heels of the crew club, I'll go down this rabbit hole with shifts in the industry.
Okay.
Watching my grandfather and watching my dad navigate this business, and they've always been on the service side for most of their careers. It was very relationship based in the oil and gas industry, large industry, but also small at the same time. I feel like, and I don't know where, but I feel like the industry has shifted from that. There's been, and I think you're bridging this. So kudos to you with Crew Club, because that was a phenomenal event that we had on Tuesday evening. And you are bridging that gap, but there's the gap between relationships and the gap in communication from operator to the OFS sector. And I don't mean, this is on a broad spectrum. I know there are people out there with great relationships.
Yeah.
They communicate well, but I feel like those two segments of the business are siloed to some extent. So the operators have their issues that they face. The service companies have their issues that they're facing, and they're trying to find solutions to the operators' issues. But a lot of times they don't know what the true issue is, what that true pain point is. And we can go into a whole other conversation about business development managers or sales, like finding what that true pain point is. But a lot of times it's just simple collaboration, communication that would break down those silos, build relationships. And I think the industry would be a lot better for it, including, innovation, right? Because the service companies are who innovates, and the operators benefit from that.
I kind of want to put a pin in that, because I definitely want to go down there, because I think that's such an important piece of where this industry is at, and kind of what, again, challenges, and again, through just conversations, we can overcome those challenges. But when you say relationship, I feel like, it's been such a long time in this industry since it's been relationship based. And I remember what it was like being relationship based, but I feel that's kind of turning into like this folklore, this buzzword, this like this industry jargon of like, oh, let's move past transactional relationship. But like, when you saw it being relationship back years ago and all that stuff, what did that truly mean? Like, what was the feeling of that for you personally? Because I know it was like, on my perspective, on my side of the table, just kind of seeing people working, hand in hand. Like, it wasn't so cutthroat. It wasn't so, I don't want to bring this up to my customer. I don't want to bring this up because I don't want to get run off or anything like that. I felt it was more, there was deeper friendships, and I don't want to mean friendship like you work with your buddies or good old boys club, nothing like that. It was that you became friends through work. You became friends through these open conversations, the time spent with each other, learning about each other's businesses. And that's kind of what I saw the benefit of having a relationship, where at the end of the day, price was important. Price will always be important. It's a business. However, for me, I love how I'm just answering the question I asked you. I'm giving you time to think about it. But for me, it was like you saw a lot more productive conversations happen in this industry. I mean, I think that's where you saw such rapid advancements, whether it's through, slick water fracking, when it comes to shale play, all that stuff, that came through collaboration, conversations. And it's and again, unfortunately, maybe for how the service companies are approaching operators, or maybe for how operators have built walls around themselves, silos, as you said. But for me, I saw there was real benefit in just kind of, and not just, not just business, not just operations efficiency, but also just the enjoyment of our industry.
Mm-hmm.
It was a lot more fun just because you were there you got to make more productive friendships, if that makes sense. But so that was my perspective, and I think things changed. I'll explain why. But what did you see when you say relationship? It was more relationship industry. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's really exactly what you just explained. It's deeper than friendships, even, like, because a lot of times, you don't necessarily have to be friends with somebody, but you do have a strong bond, and that relationship is forged through, yeah, successes, but also through failures. Some of our tightest relationships with our customers have been forged through some failures on both sides, and some really, really tough conversations. But those conversations, iron sharpens iron, and that creates a really, really tight bond that goes beyond pricing. I despise that word. I really hate talking about pricing. But yeah, I think when you can get to a level in a relationship with your customer or with your vendors, where you can sit down and have some hard conversations, and people kind of check their egos and check their emotions at the door, that's where you see productivity and innovation and things like that.
I dig that. So going from, so you joined the Navy, right?
Oh yeah, going back. So yeah, I actually had a 2-year stint up in Lubbock at Texas Tech. Um, my sophomore year, my fall semester of my sophomore year, 9/11 happened.
Okay.
And so I finished out my sophomore year, and then I enlisted that fall semester in the Navy. And then the spring semester, once it completed, so this was 2002, I called my parents and I was like, hey, leaving school, and I am going to boot camp on July 22nd, 2002.
So this was a call. I mean, so you were just kind of like called to action through 9/11, or was this kind of like
yeah, it really was. I mean, to me, that was like a really defining moment in my life. College was great, and I ended up finishing my degree later on in life. But it's probably youthful ignorance and youthful pride. I don't regret it for 1 second. It's one of my life's greatest privileges and honors to serve. But yeah, I mean, I can remember. I remember as a kid listening to my grandparents talk about, well, I remember exactly where I was whenever JFK was assassinated. These defining moments in their lives. And I remember thinking, how the heck could you possibly know where you were? I knew exactly where I was and what I was doing that morning and how I felt, and I've never forgot that feeling. And so yeah, it was a no-brainer. It required a little thought and a little prayer, and that was it. I went down and did what I thought, and the rest is kind of history. But it worked out perfect because I met my wife in California, where my last duty station was. She was going to school at San Diego State there, and then I brought her back to West Texas.
That's very similar environments. I mean, Southern California and Midland, very similar scenery, in my opinion.
Same tempo, yeah.
So I mean, were you a first generation, like a person that was in the armed forces in your family?
I'm sorry, I cut out just a little bit.
No, I'm saying, were you first generation? That's I think that's such an interesting path to take. You're in college, you're sheltered at some certain level, university student, all that stuff, sheltered. Next thing you know, you're kind of pulling yourself out of this environment. You grew up in Midland, you're going to Lubbock, what was that, 2-3 hours away? You're in this circle, you're in this bubble. And next thing you know, you're joining the Navy to kind of get out there and kind of see the world, and kind of inspired by the attacks on America back then.
Yeah, no, actually, I have a very rich tradition of military service in my family. My grandfather, my several uncles. It dates back for several generations. A lot of friends too, as well, that joined straight out of high school, and I use those guys as kind of sounding boards and mentors with my decision. Really, the Navy, like the choice for the Navy, was just like they were the better salespeople. when it came to like, my job. Like you have to take an ASVAB test when you go in enlisted. You take this test and they're like, hey, dude, you're really smart, which isn't true. You
like
need
ChatGPT. It's like, you're so smart, Trey.
You are so sexy. Yeah. So it was like you are super smart. There's this job called an intelligence specialist, and it's like James Bond stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I'm all over this.
Yeah.
Not really the case. Like it's cool. It was a neat job, and I loved it. And I got to do some good work, some effective and productive work. But yeah, there was no human intelligence type missions where I was out there like doing anything cool. I was usually locked in a skiff with a security clearance that sounded cool, but I don't know any state secrets. So
was it perceptions? Perceptions often true, so it sounds cool. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So coming in the oil field, you went over to SLB or Schlumberger, as we used to call it back in the day.
Yeah. Yeah. My so when I got out of the military, I called my dad and was like, hey, time to get into the business. He was like, all right, well, this was right when the Eagleford was actually in its infancy. And my wife is from Lake Tahoe originally. And so she was like, I'm not moving to West Texas. There's no trees. There's nothing out there. So I said, hey, this is great. San Antonio, just South San Antonio. There's, the oil fields kicking off down there. I actually didn't start with Schlumberger. It was this small company called EMP Wireline. So I basically started off, on the wireline, on the completion side of the business, running a wireline truck. I started on the back of a truck for about a year, learned the business, learned the trade, and then ran a wireline truck. Started off doing logging jobs, case hole bond logs and compensated neutron logs, stuff like that. And then eventually it turned into stage work on the completion side, just plug and perf all day long. Great experience, a great company, EMP Wireline, who now is a company, basically the same leadership over there as a company called Dynasty Wireline out of Midland. Clay Bomer and a bunch of those guys. Great company. We were so good that Smith International bought us out, and then eventually Schlumberger bought Smith. So that's how I ended up at Schlumberger.
Okay. How long were you over there for before moving on?
Goodness, I think I left Schlumberger in 2015, and that's actually where my sales career began, was after Schlumberger. I had a buddy who worked for a service company, and was like, dude, I think you would enjoy sales and business development. And when I left Schlumberger, I was an operations manager on the wireline side, and I was like, dude, I hate salespeople.
Why? Okay, so question: Why? What was that stereotype that you had in your mind, and what was the initial reaction?
Great question. Pitching, right? Like, it wasn't relationship based. It was very transactional, and it still is today. There's a lot of salespeople out there. It's very transactional. Yeah. I think that's a black eye for the trade.
I don't think that's just our industry, though. I think that's every industry. A lot of salespeople in a lot of industries have a whole, because I think the barrier to entry to sales is so low, but the true performers that really drive, it's really is. I'm not just doing all this stuff, but like there are skills. I mean, just like being an engineer, just like being an architect, there are skills that are required. But you're right. I mean, that's why there's such a stereotype against, that's why salespeople all group together.
Yeah, 1,000%. It's not exclusive to the oil and gas industry. It's everywhere. I mean, you could see it in the guy who's trying to sell you a security system for your house. It's very transactional.
Yeah.
And it is a skill set. And that's kind of what it blows my mind, and kind of go off on a tangent here, but it blows my mind that people in that line of work don't practice and refine that skill set. I think it's critical for salespeople, business development managers, whatever you want to call them, to constantly be refining that with themselves, with their teammates, with their leadership, with peers across the industry. Like, hey, how are you doing? And I think that's a lot of what, some of the things that you provide with the training that you did for our team, super valuable. Even in Club Crew, like I know there's a lot of operators there, and there's a lot of great technical talk and a lot of in-depth industry talk, but there's also a lot of mentorship and leadership in that room as well. A lot of experience in those rooms. So I think as salespeople, man, just start pulling from different things that you see, start refining your craft, and get out of that transactional phase, because that's, as an operations manager at the time, that's why I hated salespeople. They just want to sell me something and move on. And it's very surface level.
Right. So when did you finally kind of, first off, consider taking that plunge? And second off, when did you start kind of having this realization that does require skills, and you do have to be tactical and strategic and intelligent to perform in sales?
Yeah, I think early on, I learned that early on. Honestly, I don't know where it came from. I'm sure I hijacked it from somebody. But early on, when I kind of got into sales, and I remember thinking, "Gosh, this is such a mistake. Like I'm gonna suck at this. This is gonna be horrible."
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I'm not typically like, and you can ask the guys on my team. Like I'm not like the most like when people think of sales guys. That's not me. Like I'm there. All I want to do, and this is from an early on in my sales career. I just want to help the customer. I just want to give them a solution to a problem. I like to me like servant leadership, servant sales has always been, I guess, my methodology.
Okay.
Because I truly do want to help. Like I personally think intent has a smell as well, and people understand like when you're out there to sell something because you're on commission based or whatever, they know. But they also know when you're genuine, and they have that feeling. That's an instinct that everybody gets. I picked up on like, hey, I've got to get better at this, and there's little ways to refine and get better. And I don't know where it came from necessarily, and where that maybe it's just intuitive. I don't know, but that pursuit of perfection, right? For me, it's always been I like to watch. I like to watch leaders around me. I like to watch professionals. I like to go on sales calls with my guys. They don't let me get in front of customers too often anymore. They usually keep me doing other things here at Mesa. But I have a group of outstanding sales professionals, and I like watching them and just learning from them. I think you can learn up the chain of command, and you can learn down the chain of command as well. So yeah, the pursuit of perfection and never stop learning. It's kind of corny, but it's true.
At what point, how long are you into your role first? And once you started your role, what were some of, I guess, the biggest uncomfortable situations you've been in? Because I think that's where you come in growth. And when did you realize like, yeah, this is, I'm assuming because the team that's around you and the group that you're with, that you probably love what you're doing. And that's an assumption. Just obviously, you love what you're doing, but there's also, pros and cons of everything, it doesn't matter. But I would assume. So when did you actually kind of like, this is kind of, I like this stuff. I like what I'm doing. I like providing solutions, and I kind of like the servant customer approach. Where did this kind of like, when did it kind of like dawn on you? Like, okay, this is it. This is my groove. No more operations.
Yeah. I had a consultant that I worked with. He was like my very first customer down in South Texas. His name was Todd Dolan. He's since passed, but he was a great man, very fair and honest, but he was also extremely hard. And I love those individuals because you always know where you stand. And he did not like sales guys for that same reason that everybody, doesn't like salespeople. But I got in, I took my lashings, I started building a relationship, and I became an asset to him. So like, at the time I worked for Select Energy, and we did water transfer and water hauling and stuff like that. It was my first sales job. But I made it a point to know other sales professionals. And one day he needed a service. I don't really recall what the service was, but he needed a service. And I said, I know a guy who does that. And you with me?
I'm with you. I'm picking up. I'm tracking. Yeah.
No, you there?
I got you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you. Sorry. I don't know what's going on.
It's Midland internet.
Yeah. Anyways, he needed a service, and I said, hey, we don't provide that, but I know a guy who does. And he was like, oh man, that's awesome. So I called him up. We got what he needed. And from that day on, he started viewing me as more of an asset and not a sales guy. And he would introduce me as just, hey, this is Trey Lawson with Select. Like, start introducing me to his inner circle, other operators in the area of South Texas. And that just slowly grew. And I think that was that moment that clicked for me. Like, okay, I need to be an asset to these people. Like, even if it doesn't serve me in any purpose, I need to be able to help them. And that was the defining moment for me. That's when it finally clicked.
Is that what you attribute your success to? Kind of like, I feel like everyone's got their own little like, hey, let's, meet with mentors, be surrounded by aspirational. What would be your kind of, if you had to give yourself advice back in the day, or anyone kind of entering in, what would be your kind of a tip, trick, or advice you would have to kind of for people out there?
Oh, that's a big question too. I've had a lot of advice. Most of it I didn't take, and I should have.
I'm in the same boat.
Uh,
I
yeah,
try to
man.
practice what I preach when I can.
I mean, I get daily advice, that I'm taking that's still beneficial. Yeah, I don't know if I could pinpoint something. I mean, that was a moment that I remember. You know, this is actually recently. I think this was like 3 or 4 years ago. So, at my time with Mesa, I've been with Mesa 8 years now. But 3 or 4 years ago, 3 years ago, when I took this role, um, you talk about imposter syndrome, right? Like
Yeah.
when our CEO Scott said, "Hey, we want you to be our new VP," my first kind of reaction was like, "Oh man, I am not, qualified, not capable." All the things that start going on in your head.
Yep.
And he had this words of advice, and it was, "Hey, look, you always need to be in a position where you're reaching for that next rung." Like basically saying you need to be in a position that is uncomfortable for you, where you're
Okay.
stretching yourself, where you're pushing yourself. And that at that moment, one, it calmed me and said, okay, well, I feel extremely uncomfortable right now, so I guess I'm in the right spot. Uh, but two, like it helped me get used to being uncomfortable and intentionally putting myself in uncomfortable situations, such as this podcast, right?
Yeah.
I'm not a very outwardly facing uh, professional, but here I am doing a podcast with JP Warren. So
The number one oil and gas podcast globally, by the way. I will say that. Number one
yes,
globally. How was that transition? Because I think there's with M&A going on, with people kind of like doing more with less, taking all these new roles and all that stuff. What was that transition like for you, going from, the salesperson out there, on the streets, meeting with customers, to taking more of this leadership role? And what did you have in mind when you thought, like, okay, well, I'm going to start leading now? I mean, how did you, because that is obviously that's a huge skill set that, degrees are given, it's studied and all that stuff. What, I guess, when you had your idea of leadership, stepping in that leadership role as the new VP at Mesa, what was that like for you? And kind of what did you, I guess, want to achieve? And how did you, does that make sense? Like, how did you level up to that leadership role?
Yeah. Great question. Reflecting back from my military career to, I mean, actually, high school sports to present day, I have a very good palette of what bad leaders look like and what good leaders look like and what great leaders look like. And you can pull from all of those to benefit you. I'm fortunate that at Mesa, we have an exceptional pool of leaders. And I don't mean that just to say it on a podcast. Like our executive team are some of the finest leaders I've ever met in my entire life. My peers and even people that just are on the front lines of our operations.
Yeah.
We pour a lot of resources into leadership training. We make sure that leadership reverberates throughout our culture. So I've had a lot of really good mentors with regards to leadership. One piece of advice that Fred, our COO, gave me when I took this role, and I've heard him say it numerous times since, was if you get to a point where you think you've arrived as a leader, when you think you've got it figured out, it's time for you to go. And so I always remember that because I'm constantly trying to improve as a leader. I want to, and my team deserves that, right? They don't need me being stagnant. The transition, that was difficult, right? Because being in sales is a very tactical kind of operation. Like you're out there and you're doing things that are affecting you today and tomorrow, and 6 months down the road. Being in this leadership role, it was a tough transition to get out of that tactical mindset,
Yeah.
and really get into that strategic mindset of how can I set my team up and how can I set this company up for success 3 years down the road and 5 years down the road.
How did you reposition your mindset? Because, you're right. The team there in front of customers is very operational. You measure your success based on whatever metrics you have personally, whether it's meetings, jobs, whatever that is, right? once you get in that leadership role, you're no longer on the front lines. You know what I mean? You're no longer in front of your customers, your operators, I call them frustomers, friends that are customers. So how do you actually deal with that mentally? Because I know there's a lot of people that get promoted to leadership. It's like kind of like a battlefield promotion. Next thing you know, they're micromanaging. They want to be in the front lines. They want to meddle with their teams and all that stuff. So how did you actually effectively, healthy, separate yourself and start measuring, I guess, kind of like how effective you are as a leadership role, and I guess different like personal KPIs for you? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does.
Okay.
There's a lot to that. It's relationship based, right? So what's helped me get from the tactical to the strategic is my leadership, providing mentorship and advice and guidance and counsel. But it's also my team. So I have a very strong relationship with each and every one of my team members. We're a tight knit group. Esprit de corps is high throughout the team. And before I moved into this current role, I made sure that I had a guy who was prepared and ready to take my role.
Okay.
Kind of that sales manager role. And you've met Kyle. So that's the individual that I spent time, mentoring and helping get ready. But when I promoted, I was able to pull him up. Well, now I got a guy in that role who's handling more of the tactical day-to-day team management, driving the team, pushing the team towards our KPIs, towards our goals. And because I have that relationship and that trust is built, that made it easy for me to kind of detach a little bit from the tactical battles and really take a look at where we need to take this team, over the next 3 to 5 years.
Is that so? Okay. So you're talking about a huge subject about delegation. Is that something? And delegation is very tough for a lot of people, especially when they're transitioning new positions, right? Like you lose control, you don't feel like your fingers on the pulse, et cetera. So I battle that constantly. The feeling of control and delegation, all that stuff. How did you start feeling comfortable, I guess? And when did you realize that you had to start delegating?
It goes back to relationships. Well, I can tell you when I realized I had to get better at delegation is when I was just in the weeds, just drowning, trying to balance everything. But it didn't last too long because, again, I go back to those relationships, and from those relationships, there's a lot of trust. And that's the key component is trust and communication, just like in a marriage. And so, I trust Kyle and our team. They have a very clear understanding of what our strategic guidance is, and every decision they make. That's one great thing about our organization and our culture. We're very decentralized in our decision-making process. Like everybody understands our strategic mission and our strategic vision and where we're headed as a company. And so every decision that is made is based with that frame of reference. And so that helps guide decisions. That also helps leaders have comfort that their team knows what to do and know how to do it. So we give them a task, a job, like, hey, here's where we want to be at the end of the year. You go do it. And you figure out your own way to do it. Like, as long as it's not unethical, immoral, or illegal, like, get after it, right? We're here to serve our customers. We're here to provide solutions and what that looks like. And if it gets us to this steady state over here, then they have that latitude to go make those decisions. So that helped. That really was a huge help for that transition from kind of the tactical sales role to more of this, VP, whatever, strategic leadership role that I'm in now.
You hate titles. I love it.
I
was very impressed, and I'm not just saying this, but like I loved like what you told me something during the training that, let's talk about the effectiveness of a team. And I'm at Crew Club. We've had a lot of conversations. Kate Hyken led a conversation about human engineering, pretty much how to empower your team so you don't have to micromanage. So they make the best decisions for the company and themselves and all that stuff. And kind of you just summarized that pretty quick right there. So you are giving them the why. You're giving them the direction of the company, where you want the company to be. And you're kind of letting them carve their own path, kind of get to that end goal their own way. And I think that was something that a lot of people are touching on right now in leadership positions is communicating your why. What's the Mesa's why and all that stuff. But you said something that I was impressed with. I mean, we're in this room and we had various people from various backgrounds, experience, all that stuff. And, I asked you, I was like, how do you select your team? And you said, hey, listen, at the end of the day, and this brought me back to my old previous company, Pinergy. And it's like, listen, at the end of the day, we want the right people on the bus because we're going in the good direction. We don't want, we're not looking for the positions, we're looking for the people. And I thought that was just such a insightful peek into kind of the culture over there at Mesa. And that's something I just wanted to kind of plug that because I thought that was just an impressive comment and kind of an outlook on how to build a team.
Yeah, and that's not just me. That's our whole company. So we ideal team player is kind of what we base our recruiting methods on, and that's hiring people who are hungry, humble, and smart. Your resume can look pretty, but we don't really care. And we honestly, in some positions, we don't even care about your experience. A lot of the sales guys on my team have zero sales experience. But if you have if you're humble, you have the right attitude, and you're ready to get after it, like you can teach people to do just about anything. 100%. If they taught me how to run a case-tow wireline truck or how to be a sales guy, like anybody can learn those trades. So yeah, I mean, I think hire for character, hire for culture fits, and you can't go wrong.
There's something that I see, I work with I deal with a lot of companies. I see a lot of companies. I work with a lot of companies and all this stuff. But there's something that that I pick up from y'all, and maybe you can kind of dive into this more. I don't feel like you're a VP of sales and marketing at just a company. You know what I mean? I feel that you and everyone else in the group, in the room and all that stuff, you're very prideful about what y'all do. And it's very it's very prevalent. It's very obvious that what y'all are doing, there's a lot of pride behind it because there's a lot of purpose, right? So when you're stepping up to the plate as a VP of sales and marketing and Mesa and all that stuff, what comes to that? Like, why are you here? Why is Mesa here? Why are y'all here? I mean, it's not just renting generators. You know what I mean? You can do that at Lowe's if you want and all that stuff. But but seriously, there's a lot of pride. There's a lot of structure. So for example, another company that I respect, I'm going to give you time to think about this while I'm talking. Like, for example, AES. That's not just a fluids company. It's a very structured, scientific, like technology forward thinking, just like your company. I remember talking, you're like, yeah, we just built a microgrid in New Mexico. It was like mind boggling. So what again, I don't want to plug, I don't want to pitch or anything like that, but it is a truly unique company and approach. And I guess, can you shine some light on why are y'all here in the space in the first place? I mean, that's why are you structure? Why do y'all structure so much different layers of stuff, just like AES, or just like Diamondback is doing all these extra things? Like, why are you doing all these extra stuff if you're providing power to locations? Like, why are y'all the Yankees?
Well, I mean, again, it's to serve. It's to provide our customers, whether that's excuse me, in the oil and gas space, in the commercial industrial space, or in the manufacturing space, people who are looking to purchase engines and package those in their own generators. The why is to provide our customers and our industries that we operate in a solution to their power needs. And that's a little bit pitchy, but it also is the core truth. So we got into this business on the oil and gas side. We realized that this was back in 2014, that everything was being powered with diesel generators, and we were able to look at this and say, we can do this better, cleaner, more efficient. and our whole mantra is, we can do it responsibly and reliably. And so that's kind of what we base it. There you go, responsible, reliable power. So yeah, it is to serve an industry and to provide a solution where there isn't one. And so it's more from generators to, we don't longer care necessarily about the generators. The generators are a means to an end. It's power solutions and everything in between. So it's the distribution gear. It's the switch gear. It's the turnkey solutions that we provide to our customers. So somewhat acting as an ECP with regards to these setups. That's both in the oil field and outside of the oil field. So we could buy generators and we could buy distribution gear and buy all this stuff from all these different people. But what we found is, when we build it ourselves, we can build it with the customer in mind, and not the features. The features, you can add those in, but it's the benefits from us building it ourselves. us listening to the customers. I mean, that's how a lot of our equipment has been built, is the customer saying, man, it'd be great if you could help us with this problem. Oh, we can, because we build it. And so, yeah, we make those changes, we engineer those changes, we build it to solve that problem, and away we go.
How much I feel like, so y'all are kind of the first, not the first movers, but I feel like lately in the last couple of years, the conversation of power generation and power demand has really kind of surfaced, right? It's kind of there's a lot of people, more people talking about it right now than I think's ever happened before in this industry. Whether it's an influx of population, whether it's the grid, whether it's remote power in remote places, wherever y'all operate all that stuff. Are you seeing a lot more operators discuss power generation, power demand with y'all, with I guess in the industry?
It is, yeah. Specifically speaking of the oil and gas, it has changed. Used to, generators were just, it was surface equipment rentals,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That is morphing into, now we are starting to be seen by the oil and gas industry, by our customers, by operators, as a critical infrastructure in their assets, just the same as utilities would be. For a lot of customers, they are building, distributed power locations where we're setting up microgrids and they're running distribution to their locations. And so instead of just having site by site power, we can kind of optimize their power needs, throw it all on a single location. And not only do you get that optimization, which brings down your cost per kilowatt hour for electricity, but it also creates a large amount of reliability or resiliency in that as well. So when you have a microgrid, you can have one or two of our modules of our generators go down, and that microgrid, the other generators out there, will carry or share that load and keep the site up and running. So it's kind of evolving from that archaic site by site diesel generator power to more of a decentralized microgrids.
Well, I mean, it's literally the heart of any location out there. I mean, if that goes down, then everything's not working out there.
Regardless of what you're powering, you have to have electricity.
Just a couple questions, kind of wrap this up. I don't want to take up too much of your morning. We've been chatting for 45 minutes. What are some? So I think when it comes to power generation, power demand, and all that stuff, I've been at some crew club tables. We have some. I mean, I think you might contribute to this. So I'm actually asking about this. There seems to be everyone knows it's a necessity. Everyone knows the importance of it. Everyone knows this. Everyone knows that and all that stuff. But I feel that there's some, whether it's misconceptions or whether it's not understanding and all that stuff. Like, what are some common misconceptions about whenever you are having these conversations? Because I feel like whether you're talking to a customer, it's like people want to know, people act like they know what they're talking about. Like, oh yeah, 1 kilowatt per blah, 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 blah. I see that happen a lot. And I see a lot of people around the table nod their heads. Then after I'll have private conversations like, that sounds interesting as hell, but I had no idea what the hell that kilowatts or whatever. What are some common misconceptions that you wish that, people, not just customers and all that stuff, but maybe the industry would understand when it comes to power generation, power demand, when you're having these conversations?
Yeah, there's several misconceptions. I think one of the biggest ones, I could start big and work my way in, but one of the biggest ones is hey, line power is cheaper and line power is more reliable. That's not always the case, especially in these microgrid solutions that we provide. A lot of times we're very competitive with line power rates, and that includes the fuel that's being consumed as well, especially in the Permian, where natural gas, a lot of times Waha is trading at negative numbers and zero. So gas has very little value in some locations, but even with gas at $1 or $2 an MCF, we can still be extremely competitive, if not beat line power. The great thing about our solutions is we're highly scalable. And so, when you build out infrastructure to power a location that's going to be powering 8 ESPs, that's a lot of power and a lot of infrastructure you're bringing into that versus what happens, 18, 24 months from there when you switch over to the gas lift or rod pump or something like that. And you don't need all that infrastructure that you built out. We talk to operators and try to get them to look at, today you need this power. We can handle that, but we're also scalable. We can add and we can subtract from our solutions to give you that exact power that you need. that's one of the biggest misconceptions. I would say another one is just not all, like, people look at generators, and again they go back to that equipment rental,
Surface rental. Yeah.
surface rentals. And not all generators are created equal, right? I mean, yes, they have an engine, yes, they have a gen in them, but it's the service that follows those is what separates. And not everybody honestly can go turn a wrench and fix generators, and not everybody can string these things together and make 10, 15, 20 megawatts worth of power out of these generators. So there's a high level of engineering. There's a high level of expertise that goes behind at least the packages that we build, lease, and sell. And when we set up a microgrid for a customer, we're not just bringing generators out, hooking them up, and starting them up. These solutions have been designed, engineered, and also validated by our staff engineers, electrical engineers, so that before we take them out there, it is a safe and reliable package that we deliver to our customers.
It's mind-boggling too. I mean, the fact that this industry right now it's so risk adverse. It's so like every decision matters and all that stuff. So it's one of those things where it's like whenever you are having conversations about power, whether you are having conversations about plugs or whatever it is, to not have conversations with operators or clients, whoever, whether it's oil and gas, whatever it is, to not have these conversations to better understand. So for example, 5 years ago, I would have thought I needed, 15 generators. I had to run this. In reality, you probably need this and maybe this, and it's not as cumbersome as I thought. So the fact is to make less risk adverse decisions for operation. I think now it's like there's not a lot of room for error right now, in my opinion, in this industry.
Yeah.
And that's just one of those things too. So how do you stay, I guess, whenever things are going on, whenever you're dealing with, commodity prices, customer, all this stuff, how do you stay grounded to your team and kind of can keep your team inspired to keep moving forward? How do you separate yourself from the BS to be an effective leader for your team? What do you do for yourself?
I mean, look, at the end of the day, me and the team and our company as a whole, we can only affect what we can affect, right? And so if you approach every day like that, like, look, I'm going to go into this day. Our customers are going to make the decision that they make. We are going to provide a lot of guidance. We're going to ask some various questions. But at the end of the day, it's our job to separate ourselves from our competitors or people who do somewhat a similar service than we provide. And that's really where the benefits, the how, the why, and that cost conversation comes into play, because there's a lot of cost savings when it comes to your power out in the field. Like downtime, not good. Response time, what does that look like? So really quantifying that for the customer, providing data, like that's one thing that I've noticed from operators is they have been and are continuing to be very, very data driven, and to the third decimal point. And so really, helping them out with that data, providing data through our telemetry, showing them what this looks like, showing them what they're getting down to the penny per kilowatt hour equivalent, is extremely valuable to them. And I think we have to help them get them as much data as they can when they're making these decisions. Because you're right, like $63 oil, there's a lot of pressure on our operators right now. And that pressure goes downhill. There's a lot of pressure on service companies right now as well. And so, affect what you can affect, provide our customers with a high level of service, and have those tough, candid conversations with them.
So where do you see what skill sets with everything changing right now? I like to ask them this broad question, whether it's AI, automation, power demand, power generation, all that stuff. What skill sets, what things do you see bottleneck in this industry, overall industry challenges, and where do you see those opportunities kind of coming down the line?
Oof.
I know, right? That's that's if we had those answers, we wouldn't be where we're at. We'd be sitting.
No kidding. That's the ending question to this. Wow.
I'll say this. I'll chime in and give you time to think. I think one of the biggest gaps in our industry is how people. I think it's going to be an over-reliance on decisions made through AI. And again, I love AI. I'm not knocking AI, but I think there is true potential. For example, we just had that Crew Club event and we're sitting around the table, and operators, you start noticing that operators aren't conversing with other operators on best practices, on best ways to kind of overcome challenges. But not only that, there was very interesting too. Like, we're sitting around the table, I'm observing this, and all these challenges that we're talking about, and this happens all the time. It's not just in Midland event, but all these challenges. It's like, are there any conversations with service companies happening about this? Because again, as we're talking about innovation, as we're talking about creativity, that just comes through conversations. You're not going to get creative through AI, through reliance on software, or data, or anything like that. There's magic that comes through conversation, and that has to be done through kind of connection, rapport, all that. I see the big bottleneck is people not getting together with operator to service. I see the lack of developing these relationships, not even relationships, but the lack of having these conversations will be a bottleneck. And I see one of the biggest areas to make advances in this industry, to be successful in the industry, is having more collaborative conversations across the aisle, kind of with everyone, beginning of your operations or even through the operations, because that's when SIMOPS comes up. That's when quad frac comes up. That's when XYZ comes up. That's when microgrids come up. I remember in the training, it was such a cool story. There was one customer, I'm not going to say who or where, but they were talking about adding on. You're like, yeah, we could throw down 30 generators on this side, make some cash, but that doesn't make sense because they're trying to do X, Y, and Z. Let's just microgrid and drop that down. So it was such a cool thing just through conversations. It's just pushing this industry and companies in the industry forward. But without those conversations, it's just guesswork, and there's going to be no advancement in ideas or creativeness.
Yeah, I mean that answer's going to be hard to follow up, JP. Because you're talking about what we were talking about earlier. Good job. You're talking exactly what we were talking about earlier with regards to relationships and those silos between, the OFS side and the operator side. Yeah, I don't think I can top that answer. I will say that one bottleneck that I see, and there are companies out there who do it differently. So that, again, this isn't not broad stroke over everybody.
Yeah.
But one of my pet peeves is when people tell me, "Well, we've always done it this way," or "It's always been done this way," or "You can't do that." Those are death blows to your personal attitude, your personal progress, and the same towards your organization and your company. If that mindset is in your culture, we do not have that. We've pushed back against that very strongly. So there is no, we've always done it this way. It's how are we going to do it next? And it's not, we can't do it. It's how do we do it? And that's a tough stretch for engineers, because engineers are very black and white, right? And so
but also engineers also like looking at challenges and
they're problem solvers.
And problem solvers. Yeah,
they
absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So anyway, Trey, any last thoughts that you want to share with us and all that stuff? Everyone, if you're out there listening to Trey, again, this is Trey Lawson, the VP of Sales and Marketing at Mesa Solutions. Obviously, find him on LinkedIn and all that fun stuff. But what are some final thoughts you have for us? Some world-changing final thoughts by Trey that you want
world-changing
that you want to leave the millions of download listeners we have on this podcast?
Lord, I hope nobody takes my advice. Yeah, look, I appreciate the opportunity. Sometimes they push back on me, and I appreciate that. That's the relationship part where they're like, "Hey, Trey, you're jacked up right now. Fix it." And I welcome that. But I just appreciate you having me on. Appreciate my team forcing me to do this. That's them forcing me to get out of my comfort zone. I value what you're doing in the industry, JP. Not to pitch your stuff, but man, the crew club that right there is one of the single most valuable things that's going on in the industry right now is bridging the OFS side and the operator side to have some very candid conversations. I think that's a great progress for our industry. And then the trainings you offer as well is super solid. I will say, going forward as an industry, it's constant innovation. That's the only way we're going to get better. That's the only way we're going to move forward. As inventory and things like that get tighter in the Permian, as more M&A happens, only the strongest are going to survive. So, at Mesa, we're setting ourselves up to to be a power provider for years to come, not just in the oil and gas space, but our commercial industrial space, our cell space with power cores and engines.
Everyone needs power.
Everybody needs power, and the growth that's going on in Texas, in and out of the oil and gas space, is astronomical. So dispatchable power is extremely important. Transmission is important, but getting all those things done takes time, money, and energy, and a lot of people need power right now. So that's where we've made our business.
I mean, the spot you're in right now. It's such a cool spot to be in because, again, it's people are talking about it more. People are understanding that, hey, yeah, you can generate and all stuff, but you need reliable power. You really do. Like, I'm not trying to plug in all stuff, but you really do need reliable power. I mean, it really is the heartbeat of locations out there. When that goes down, man, you're faced with a lot. And listen, shit happens in the oil field. When it goes down, obviously it goes down, but it's what you can do about that. How quick you can come back after. So honestly, Trey, I appreciate you. And honestly, like there's companies in this industry that I admire, and that's always, comes through sick, it's always cyclical, back in the day, old Anadarko, but Diamondback right now, Mesa, you see a lot of companies that invest in their people, invest in their team, that are here beyond just, listen, we're all here to obviously make money and all this stuff. And I agree, advancement won't be about squashing price. There's no margins anymore. So now the true advancement in this industry will be through innovation, that will be through collaboration. That's putting a lot of people in the room thinking, hey, how do we do this better? What new approach can we have about this? So I think companies like y'all again, being around y'all, it was a great experience for me, just because being around good people inspires me. That's what I'm here for. That's what keeps me going. And just being a part of that room when we were doing that in Loveland, Colorado, it was a great experience. And I just love seeing the continued output by your team, just the collaboration on their part, and just the optimism, man. You don't have a lot of optimism in this industry right now. And the fact that I guess y'all's team just inspires optimism in a lot of people. I just want to say hats off to you for what you're building and the group that you have there. And buddy, I just want to say I'm looking forward to continuing our relationship and our conversation. Thanks for taking the time out. We are at 57 minutes now, and we're under an hour. Good job, buddy.
Man, that was fun. I really appreciate that. Good opportunity.
Well, I appreciate your time. You have a good weekend right now, everyone. This is Trey Lawson, the VP of Sales and Marketing of Mesa Solutions. Check him out. He'll send you a free mug, a coffee mug, like you sent me. And again, you want to talk about anything power, and power is one of those confusing subjects. A lot of people think that they know, but might not. And he's just a great resource to connect with, shoot the bull with, and also just geek out about power, or have an intro to any power conversation that you have. So Trey, you keep it real. Have a great, safe trip back home. Enjoy your weekend with the family, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, amigo. See you.
Energy Crew signing off. Da, 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 da.